The shuttle hummed quietly as it descended through Zythera 9 lavender skies. Its metallic body reflected the strange colors of the clouds, which shimmered in shades of violet and gold. Lyra Voss pressed her forehead to the glass, her eyes wide with wonder. This was her first time on a planet outside Earth, and everything felt bigger, brighter, and more alive than anything she had ever imagined. She could see the sprawling city below, with tall crystalline towers rising like glass fingers into the sky. Hovercars zipped between them, leaving streaks of neon light in their wake. Alien shapes moved on the ground, some with multiple arms, some with wings, and some with features she could hardly describe. Lyra's stomach twisted with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had left her family, her home, and her quiet life behind to join the first Interspecies Academy on Zythera 9. Humanity had come a long way, but it was still new to the galaxy. She wondered how the other students would treat her. Would they see humans as weak like she had been warned? Or would they be curious, eager to learn from Earth's people? The shuttle touched down with a soft thud, and a hiss of air escaped from the landing doors. Lyra stepped out, clutching her small backpack. The ground beneath her feet was soft and warm, like walking on moss, but the smell was unusual, a mix of sweet flowers and sharp metallic tangs. Other students were arriving too, and the courtyard soon buzzed with a chaotic symphony of languages, clicks, whistles, and growls. Lyra spotted a few humans, but most of the crowd was alien. There were Clerians, tall and horned, with skin that shifted in color with their emotions. There were small, fast creatures with translucent wings, gliding gracefully between students. There were beings with long, serpentine bodies coiled in patterns that seemed to make no sense, yet they moved with perfect balance. Lyra felt a tiny knot of anxiety. How would she fit in among them all? She was still trying to steady herself when a voice called out from behind. "Hey, you there!" Turning, she saw 3 Clerians, taller than anyone she had ever seen. Their horns curved back over their heads and their skin glimmered a dull green. They looked at her with amusement in their glowing eyes. "You're new," one said, his voice low and rough. "Earth human, right? Cute. Let's see if you can survive here." Lyra smiled politely, keeping her hands to herself. "Yes, I'm Lyra Voss. Nice to meet you." The Clerians laughed, a sound like scraping metal. "You're tiny. This is going to be fun." Before she could react, one of them shoved her gently but firmly. She stumbled and fell onto the soft ground, the moss-like surface cushioning her, but not enough to hide her surprise. A few nearby students gasped, but most continued walking, not wanting to get involved. Lyra felt a rush of heat to her cheeks, but she didn't cry or shout. She stood up slowly, brushed the dirt from her clothes, and looked directly at the tallest Clerian. "I'll be fine," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, and it made the bullies blink. They had expected her to cry or shout, maybe even run. Instead, she stood there composed. The 3 Clerians exchanged a look, shrugged, and walked away, muttering insults that she only partially understood. Lyra exhaled slowly. She knew this was only the beginning. Zythera 9 was a world full of challenges, but she had learned early in her life that fear and anger rarely solved anything. Observation, patience, and careful planning did. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Lyra was introduced to her dormitory, a room shared with 2 other students, a winged Thrylan named Kilo and a small, chatty creature called Sarai, whose skin glowed faintly like moonlight. They were friendly, curious, and full of questions about Earth. Lyra answered patiently, careful not to reveal everything about her life back home. Classes began in the afternoon. Lyra was surprised at how advanced the technology was. Hollow screens floated in the air, displaying planets, star systems, and complex equations. Instructors were not just humans. Most were alien, with bodies that seemed designed to perform multiple tasks at once. The subject matter was challenging, but Lyra thrived on complexity. She quickly noticed patterns others missed, and her questions often surprised even the instructors. By the end of the day, Lyra felt exhausted but exhilarated. The alien bullies were still lurking in the background, watching her with cautious curiosity. Perhaps they were realizing that she was not an easy target. Perhaps they were. That evening, the students gathered for a communal meal. Long tables stretched across the courtyard, and trays of alien food were passed around. Lyra hesitated, unsure what to try, but sorry I nudged her. It's all safe. You'll like it. Try the purple fruit, it tingles a bit, but in a good way. She bit into the fruit, and a fizzy sensation spread across her tongue. She laughed softly, the sound catching the attention of a nearby Clerian, one of her bullies from earlier. He raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised to see her smiling. Lyra caught his gaze, gave a small nod, and returned to her meal. It was a small act, but it was enough to remind the bullies that she was not scared, not intimidated. Later that night, as Lyra lay in bed, staring at the strange constellations visible through the transparent ceiling of her dormitory, she thought about the day. She had been knocked down, literally and figuratively, but she had not been defeated. Humanity had survived through challenges far greater than a few overconfident alien students. She smiled to herself, a quiet determination settling in her chest. Tomorrow, she would continue observing, learning, and planning. The bullies might think they had the upper hand now, but that would not last. Humans had a way of turning disadvantages into strengths, of seeing solutions where others saw problems. Lyra Voss had just arrived on Zythera 9, but she was already beginning to make her mark. Outside, the alien city shimmered in the night. Strange lights danced across the skyline, and the wind carried unfamiliar scents. Lyra closed her eyes, imagining the days ahead. They would be full of challenges, yes, but also opportunities. And one thing was certain. The new girl might have seemed small, fragile, or ordinary, but she was anything but that. The stars above Zythera 9 twinkled, as if acknowledging her silent vow. Lyra Voss was here to stay, and the galaxy would soon learn that underestimating a human was a very big mistake. The next morning, Lyra woke to the soft hum of the Academy's air system. Light poured in through the translucent dome of her dormitory, painting patterns of gold and violet on the floor. Outside, the courtyard was already alive with students practicing, chatting, and racing across the soft moss-like ground. Lyra stretched and swung her legs over the edge of her bed, feeling the faint tingle of excitement in her stomach. Today, she thought, would be different. She was no longer just observing, she was planning. After breakfast, she followed the stream of students to the first lesson of the day, alien communication and strategy. The classroom was vast, circular, with floating desks and holographic displays showing alien languages and symbols she had never seen before. The instructor, a tall, blue-skinned being named Terrell, moved gracefully between the floating screens. His voice was calm and precise, explaining subtle gestures that meant respect in one species and threat in another. Lyra listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She took notes diligently, noticing patterns in behavior and responses that most of the students overlooked. Her bullies, the Clerians from yesterday, were there too. They leaned back in their desks, smirking and whispering among themselves. Lyra kept her head down and focused, pretending not to notice, but she did notice everything. The way the tallest Clerian tapped his horn rhythmically when bored, the way the smallest one always glanced sideways before speaking, the subtle tension in their shoulders when they thought no one was looking. Every little habit could be useful. After the lesson, the students were given a group activity. They were tasked with solving a navigation puzzle on the holographic star map, finding the fastest route between 3 distant planets. Teams were randomly assigned. Lyra was paired with Kilo, the winged Thrylan, and Sarai, the small glowing creature from her dorm. The Clerians were on a different team, clearly trying to dominate everyone else. Lyra immediately noticed that her teammates approached the puzzle differently. Kilo flapped his wings nervously, focusing on speed rather than logic, while Sarai excitedly moved pieces without much thought. Lyra took a deep breath and began to organize their approach. "Let's slow down and think step by step," she said, pointing to the star map. "If we calculate the distances and consider fuel efficiency, we can beat teams who just rush." Her calm, reasoned approach caught her teammates' attention. Kilo stopped flapping nervously, and Sarai's glowing dimmed slightly as concentration settled in. Working together, they mapped out a route that was not the shortest in distance but the most efficient in time and resources. By the end of the exercise, their team completed the challenge first. The instructor praised their strategy, noting that humans often thought in ways that other species did not. The Clerians scowled as they watched. Their usual confidence had faltered. Lyra noticed the smallest one muttering, "How did she do that?" under his breath. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Lyra felt a quiet satisfaction. She had shown that humans could be clever, even when outmatched in physical strength. During the lunch break, Lyra and her friends explored the courtyard. They discovered a section filled with exotic plants that seemed to respond to touch. Sarai bounced happily from plant to plant, while Kilo hovered in awe. Lyra studied the plants carefully, noticing patterns in how they reacted to pressure and light. She even experimented with one plant that unfurled when pressed in a certain rhythm, a discovery that made her friends laugh with delight. Her bullies appeared again, lurking near a fountain of glowing liquid. They watched her, whispering among themselves. Lyra pretended not to see, but inside she was already thinking ahead. These students had underestimated her once, and she would let them learn, slowly, cleverly, and without cruelty, that humans were not to be dismissed. The next class was Practical Tech and Engineering, a hands-on session where students had to assemble small devices using alien materials. Lyra's team worked together efficiently. Kilo's wings allowed him to reach high places. Sarai's glowing fingers could manipulate delicate circuits, and Lyra orchestrated their movements, predicting potential errors before they happened. The Clerians, on the other hand, were rushing. They wanted to finish first, showing off their strength and speed rather than precision. As expected, their device malfunctioned halfway through. Lyra noticed a subtle smirk on the instructor's face, who clearly appreciated the human's methodical approach. After class, Lyra returned to her dorm to rest for a few minutes. She lay on her bed, thinking quietly. The day had gone well, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Clerians would not give up so easily, and there would be more challenges ahead. What mattered was preparation, observation, and timing. Lyra had all three in abundance. Later in the afternoon, an opportunity presented itself. The Clerians were boasting loudly near the training grounds, challenging other students to races and contests of strength. Lyra watched from a distance, noting how the crowd reacted. Most of the students cheered for the Clerians at first, assuming that humans could not compete in physical contests. Lyra walked calmly to the training ground. She did not confront the bullies directly. Instead, she observed their patterns, the way they positioned themselves at the start of a race, how they underestimated obstacles, and how their confidence sometimes made them careless. When the race began, Lyra did something unexpected. She used her knowledge of the terrain and her careful planning to take shortcuts the bullies did not notice. She timed her movements precisely, using momentum and leverage to overcome obstacles efficiently. By the time the Clerians realized she was ahead, it was too late. Lyra crossed the finish line first with a small, polite smile. The crowd erupted in surprise. The bullies' smirks disappeared, replaced with confusion and frustration. Lyra bowed slightly, acknowledging the cheers without gloating. The lesson was clear. Humans might not always be the fastest or the strongest, but they could outthink anyone. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Lyra returned to her dorm with her friends. They laughed about the day's events, sharing stories and ideas. Sorry I glowed brighter than usual, delighted by the clever ways Lyra had turned the tables on their bullies. Kilo flapped his wings happily, impressed by Lyra's calm strategy and quick thinking. That night, Lyra lay in her bed once more, reflecting on the day. She thought about the bullies, the challenges, and the opportunities. She realized that intelligence, creativity, and careful observation were her greatest weapons. Physical strength was impressive, but it was not the only measure of power. Humans had survived for thousands of years by thinking, adapting, and turning disadvantage into advantage. Lyra smiled softly. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and likely more attempts by the Clerians to assert dominance. But she was ready. She had learned that every moment of observation, every quiet calculation, and every small act of strategy built toward a larger victory. As the stars appeared above Scythera 9, flickering against the deep violet sky, Lyra made a silent vow. She would continue to grow, to learn, and to prove that humans were a force to be respected. The bullies might not see it yet, but soon they would. And when they did, they would understand that underestimating a human was the galaxy's first mistake, and the last one they would make in her presence. The quiet hum of the academy filled the night, but Lyra's mind was alive with possibilities. She imagined devices she could build, strategies she could test, and alliances she could form. Each thought was a step forward, a piece of the plan she had been quietly crafting since her first day. Even in sleep, her mind worked. She dreamed of the next day's challenges, of navigating alien terrains, of solving puzzles that no one else could. In her dream, she walked calmly among towering alien students, smiling as she used her wits to succeed where others relied solely on strength. By the time morning arrived, Lyra was ready once again. The galaxy was full of unknowns, full of surprises, and full of potential. She was small, perhaps, in stature, but her mind was vast, sharp, and fearless. And in a world where other species relied on size, speed, or strength, her cleverness would be the key to her triumph. The alien bullies had made their first mistake. Underestimating a human was one thing. Underestimating Lyra Voss would be their greatest regret. The morning sun spilled over the crystalline towers of Scythera 9, casting long shadows across the soft, moss-like ground of the academy courtyard. Lyra stretched as she stepped outside, feeling the warmth of the light on her skin. Today was different from the others. There was a tension in the air, a sense that something unexpected might happen. The alien students buzzed with excitement and curiosity, their eyes darting to the sky. Lyra, calm and observant, noticed it first. A flicker of motion far above the academy, a disturbance in the normally serene clouds. She followed the movement with her eyes, her mind already analyzing possibilities. The instructors had warned them about the unpredictable wildlife on Scythera 9, and though the academy grounds were considered safe, nothing in this world was truly predictable. As she watched, the flicker grew larger, and a low, distant hum began to resonate through the air. Students started pointing and whispering, some stepping back nervously. Lyra's heart quickened, not with fear but with awareness. She had been preparing for challenges, and this was one she could not ignore. The disturbance intensified. A group of large, glowing creatures descended from the clouds, their translucent wings beating rhythmically, creating gusts of wind that rustled the alien plants in the courtyard. The students froze. Most had never seen these creatures close up, and panic rippled through the crowd. The Clerians, usually bold and domineering, stumbled backward, uncertainty clouding their confident expressions. Lyra stepped forward calmly, assessing the situation. The creatures did not seem aggressive, but their size and speed could easily harm students if panic spread. She noticed a pattern in their flight, a slow, deliberate rhythm, and realized that their movements could be predicted. With a quiet but firm voice, she shouted, "Everyone, move to the center of the courtyard and stay calm. "Don't panic and don't run." Her instructions cut through the chaos. Students hesitated, then obeyed, forming a loose circle as Lyra had suggested. She noticed that some of the alien students were too scared to move, frozen in place. Lyra reached them quickly, guiding them to safety with gentle words and steady hands. Her calmness spread through the crowd, and slowly, order returned. The Clerians watched, their previous arrogance gone. They had expected humans to panic or hide, but instead, Lyra led with logic and composure. They exchanged glances, unease replacing the smug confidence they had shown before. Lyra quickly scanned the creatures, noticing a faint glow along their sides. She remembered reading in the Academy handbook that these were Luminara flyers, creatures attracted to certain frequencies of light. Thinking fast, she instructed the students to use their holocommunicators to emit a low, pulsing glow, matching the creature's natural pattern. The students obeyed, and slowly the flyers adjusted their flight, moving in controlled circles above the courtyard rather than descending directly onto the students. The instructors arrived moments later, impressed at how well the students had responded. Terrell, the blue-skinned instructor, nodded approvingly at Lyra. "Excellent work, Voss. Humans often see solutions others overlook." Lyra bowed slightly, feeling a quiet sense of pride. The Clerians, however, were clearly embarrassed. They had relied on size and intimidation to dominate the day, and now they were confronted with a human who had not only stayed calm but had solved a problem that could have endangered everyone. One of them muttered, She's clever. Too clever." Lyra did not respond. There was no need for words. Her actions had spoken louder than any boast. The flyers eventually settled in the sky, their wings glowing softly as they drifted harmlessly above the academy. The students cheered, a mixture of relief and admiration. Lyra smiled, though modestly, feeling the satisfaction of turning a potentially dangerous situation into a triumph. After the chaos subsided, the students returned to their classrooms. Lyra felt the Clerians' eyes on her, lingering and calculating. They were no longer the confident bullies they had been on her first day. Something had changed. Humans, they now realized, were capable of thinking and acting in ways that were unexpected. The next lessons proceeded with a new energy. Lyra worked alongside her friends, sharing ideas, asking questions, and quietly analyzing everything around her. The Clerians tried to challenge her in exercises, hoping to regain dominance, but Lyra anticipated their moves with subtle precision. In one exercise involving complex alien machinery, the Clerians attempted to force pieces together with brute strength. Lyra, observing carefully, guided her team to complete the same device using logic, patience, and understanding of alien technology. By the end, their device functioned perfectly, while the Clerians had malfunctioned, a small alarm blaring as a result of their forceful approach. That evening, the Academy organized a communal demonstration of talent and ingenuity. Each species was encouraged to showcase skills, creativity, or problem-solving abilities. Lyra and her friends decided to participate. They worked together to build a small device that could map the movements of the Luminara flyers, using the observations Lyra had made earlier. The device was simple, elegant, and effective. When they demonstrated it, the crowd was amazed at how a human could understand the creatures, patterns so quickly, and apply it practically. The Clerians stood nearby, their pride visibly wounded. They had relied on physical presence and dominance to impress, but humans had again proven that intelligence, observation, and creativity could surpass sheer strength. One of them muttered under his breath, "We didn't expect her to be this capable." Lyra approached them quietly, not confrontational, but with calm confidence. "It's not about being stronger," she said softly. "It's about seeing the possibilities no one else notices." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The Clerians looked away, embarrassed but thoughtful. For the first time, they were genuinely reconsidering what it meant to underestimate a human. The days that followed brought more challenges, puzzles, engineering tests, and collaborative projects with mixed teams of humans and aliens. Each time, Lyra's intelligence and composure shone. She helped her team succeed through observation, planning, and clever thinking. She noticed patterns in alien behavior, learned their habits, and found ways to turn disadvantages into advantages. By the end of the week, the Academy had begun to take notice. Humans were no longer seen as small or weak. They were seen as capable, resourceful, and resilient. The Clerians, once bullies, gradually changed their approach. They stopped mocking Lyra and began to watch her quietly, sometimes even seeking advice. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but Lyra noticed. Respect had replaced arrogance, and though the transformation was slow, it was real. One afternoon, the instructors announced a final test for the week, a teamwork challenge involving a simulated alien ecosystem. Students had to navigate, solve environmental puzzles, and complete tasks without endangering any creatures in the simulation. Lyra's team approached the challenge with calm determination. She had already studied the simulation's parameters and anticipated potential obstacles. When the simulation began, chaos erupted around them. Other teams rushed, panicked, and sometimes caused small mistakes that slowed them down. Lyra remained composed, guiding her team through obstacles, predicting creature movements, and applying her knowledge of alien behavior. The Clerians' team struggled, frustrated by unexpected challenges and mistakes that could have been avoided with foresight. By the end, Lyra's team completed the simulation flawlessly, achieving success without harming a single creature. The instructors applauded, noting that humans had a way of seeing the bigger picture, balancing speed with care, and thinking in ways others could not. The Clerians watched, a mix of admiration and humility in their expressions. After the exercise, Lyra returned to her dorm with her friends. They laughed, shared stories, and discussed what they had learned. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced challenges, solved problems, and earned respect, not through force or intimidation, but through intelligence, observation, and courage. That night, as Lyra looked at the stars above Scifi 9, she reflected on everything that had happened. From the first moment she had been pushed down in the academy corridor, she had faced a choice: to respond with fear, anger, or silence. She had chosen observation, patience, and cleverness. And through those choices, she had proven that humans could thrive anywhere in the galaxy. The alien bullies, the Clerians who had laughed at her, had learned a lesson they would not forget. Underestimating a human had been a mistake. Underestimating Lyra Voss, however, had been their greatest error. She had shown that humans were not defined by size or strength, but by adaptability, intelligence, and the courage to act wisely in the face of uncertainty. As sleep claimed her, Lyra dreamed of new challenges, new planets, and new possibilities. She dreamed of a future where humans would continue to explore, learn, and prove that the mind could outshine even the most impressive physical forms. And she knew, deep in her heart, that wherever she went, she would face challenges, but she would always rise. Not because she was strongest, but because she was clever, brave, and unyielding. The stars twinkled above Scifi 9, silent witnesses to the quiet triumph of a human who had turned disadvantage into victory. Lyra Voss had arrived as the new girl, underestimated and ignored. She would leave as a force respected by all, a reminder that humans were capable of greatness in any corner of the galaxy. The Academy would never forget the day the flyers descended, and the new girl led with calm and cleverness. And the Clerians, once arrogant bullies, would remember that the smallest human could outthink, outmaneuver, and outshine even the most imposing alien students. This Part 3 draft concludes the story.